The operation began early Friday morning. Dozens of police were brought in and did their best to control the crowds.
Please, I ask you, don't push, okay? We're going to begin.
The task for the authorities was a familiar one, to clear an overcrowded temporary welcome centre for migrants. It's the 34th such operation in the Greater Paris region in the past 2 years. The site at Porte de la Chapelle in the capital's 18th arrondissement, which opened just last year, was designed to house around 500 migrants for 5 to 10 days. But numbers have soared, especially since the closure of the Calais jungle camp last year, and many have been staying in tents in an unofficial overflow area.
We've begun an operation to shelter migrants who live in degrading conditions, both for their safety and for their health.
Nearly 2,800 migrants, mainly from Africa and the Middle East, were moved in the operation. They were taken on buses to a range of reception centres across the Greater Paris region of Île-de-France. Officials say the reception centres, as well as providing food and lodging, will offer access to medical care and immigration officials to give advice on the asylum process. But with such large numbers at play, pressure is growing on the authorities to come up with a solution. Paris's Mayor Anne Hidalgo wants a new law with measures to accommodate the migrant flow and provide better humanitarian conditions.
Violent demonstrations, escalating crime rates. France, previously a symbol of freedom and equality, now stands at a critical juncture as immigration reshapes its societal fabric. The streets of Paris reflect the repercussions of unrestricted migration. The country is embroiled in a heated discourse concerning its identity, security and future. With the increasing influx of immigrants, France confronts the stark realisation that its once open approach may no longer be sustainable.
Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni wants the EU to share out the responsibility of tackling a surge in migrants that have arrived on Italy's shores. But following a recent visit by French Interior Minister Gérald Darmanin to Rome, where he held talks with his Italian counterpart, Darmanin says France will help Italy defend its borders, but that's all.
So France won't be taking in migrants from Lampedusa. France wants to take a firm stance. There is irregular immigration in Europe, in France and in Italy, which must be combated. And it's not by taking in more people that we're going to dry up a flow.
Darmanin's comments are the latest example of Paris's hardline approach. After the Italian island of Lampedusa saw an influx of more than 8,500 arrivals last week, France tightened its borders, announcing stricter checks to stop migrants who landed in Italy from making their way north. Paris and Berlin charge Rome with failing to register new arrivals who then travel and apply for asylum in other countries, a breach of EU rules. The crisis has become a headache for the bloc and residents on Lampedusa. The influx of arrivals more than outnumber the island's population of just 6,000 people, and residents say they've had enough.
The straw that broke the camel's back was the realization that the construction of a detention and deportation center that holds 3,000 people will, I fear, reduce the island into being like a prison or some sort of a military base.
On Monday, the Italian government approved new measures to crack down on migration. It extended the length of time refugees and migrants can be detained, a move it says will ensure that those who have no right to stay are repatriated.
In 2015, Europe witnessed an unprecedented wave of 1.3 million refugees seeking asylum. France, weary of the influx, has adopted a firm stance against immigration, declaring enough is enough. How has France's journey from post-war prosperity to contemporary challenges shaped its current landscape? Following World War II, France welcomed immigrants to rebuild the nation and address labour shortages. The economic downturn of the 1970s prompted stricter policies aimed at reducing foreign workers.
In terms of the crime agency, we are attempting to tackle these gangs, but yet they continue to operate with what seems to be complete freedom.
I don't know about you, Emily. Do you know a single smuggler of human trafficking smuggler who's been convicted in British courts in the last 12 months? Do you know of one?
No.
So for them to turn around and say, we're doing a better job, it's just not good enough.
No.
We've got to stop it by putting the resources, working with the EU. And I say the EU again, I think the French, we cannot work with them. They're not on our side. They're actually quite happy for people to come from France to the UK. Then they don't have to deal with the problem. It becomes our problem. So we've got to do a deal with the EU itself. We've got a horse trade with them. And if they don't do a deal with us, and let's just say we come out the convention, we send a helicopter back to France with the refugees. Take them back. And then the EU will have to come to the table. It needs radical decisions, radical plans.
Well,
we can't do that currently because we're committed on the Refugee Convention. We can't do that. But if we had domestic legislation, we could.
During the 1980s and 1990s, France concentrated on assimilating existing immigrants while restricting new immigration. President Sarkozy's tenure in the 2000s saw France adopting selective immigration policies that favoured skilled professionals. France's immigration stance underwent a significant shift following the tragic Paris attacks in November 2015. The refugee crisis posed a challenge to France's immigration framework, with 70% of French citizens expressing strong dissatisfaction with the EU's management of the crisis. What is the actual situation regarding immigration in France?
Europe is in the eyes of a major political storm, and the key instigator is a long-drawn issue, immigration for months. Member nations of the European Union have been in a tussle over the influx of migrants, and now two contentious but key bills on migrant regulation have been passed, one by France and another by the European Parliament. We begin with France, where the Macron-led centrist government has passed a controversial immigration bill. After months of back and forth, the amended bill was passed under immense pressure from France's far right. The new legislation makes it tough for migrants to bring family members into France.
The bill that we proposed is one that has the merit to propose 27 articles that allow the regularization of undocumented workers. And I'm proud to be the only interior minister of the only government, of the only president that will put into the Republic's laws the regularization of all those who do not have their papers and who are working in our country.
A provision on discriminatory benefits between citizens and migrants has also led to an uproar in Parliament, so much so that the health minister has resigned. This is the first resignation from the cabinet, as Macron's party continues to remain divided over that legislation. The bill is a mix of measures aimed at expelling more undocumented people and improving the integration of migrants. It further facilitates the regularization of undocumented workers, that is, undocumented workers, while providing greater scope for deportation, especially for foreigners who commit crime. The bill also addresses the simplification of immigration litigation while fast-tracking the migration process. Now, this bill, which is crucial to Macron's second mandate, can have significant repercussions. It can impact his support base and strengthen the position of far-right leader Marine Le Pen ahead of the upcoming European Parliament elections.
While political discourse often portrays a new and emerging issue, the truth is that 21% of immigrants in France have been undocumented at some point, a statistic that has remained consistent for decades. The proportion of immigrants in France's population has grown from 6.5% in 1968 to 10.3% in 2021, totaling 7 million people. France received 278,000 new immigrants in 2021, marking a 20% increase from the previous year, with the majority arriving from Morocco, Algeria and Tunisia. In 2022, there was a notable 33% rise in asylum applications, primarily from Afghanistan, Bangladesh and Turkey. Nearly 45% of applicants were granted protection, marking the highest numbers since the 1980s. Interestingly, there was a 20% increase in French citizens relocating to OECD countries in 2021, with popular destinations including Switzerland, Spain and Canada. In 2023 alone, France granted nearly 48,000 permits for humanitarian reasons, marking a 15% increase primarily for refugees.
France is not the only nation dealing with political turmoil. Fueled by immigration policies, all of Europe is facing a crisis. on who takes how much responsibility for the mass immigration into that region. But now the bloc has broken an impasse as leaders reached an agreement on new rules focused on shared cost and responsibility of migrants. Representatives of the European Parliament and EU governments reached an accord after talks lasted all night long. The new pact on migration and asylum will likely come into effect early next year. Spain, Greece and Italy have shown overwhelming support for the new agreement. Italy's far-right government has said the country no longer feels alone in bearing the burden of migrant influx. However, Hungary has rejected the EU migration deal, stating that the country will not let anyone into its country against its will. How much or how each member nation receives this bill will again play a crucial role in the EU Parliament elections in June 2024. What raises the stakes here is that over 400 million people across EU countries cast their ballot, making the EU Parliament the bloc's only institution which is directly elected. With Europe's political sands shifting towards the right, there now is a newfound fear that immigrant voices and their representation will be overshadowed in the polls next year. WeOn is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.
A notable challenge for immigrants in France is their higher unemployment rate compared to native-born citizens. This disparity is particularly evident among immigrants from outside the European Union, who experience unemployment rates from 2 to 5 percentage points higher than those born in France. The economic impact of immigration tends to be modest, typically ranging from minus 0.5% to plus 0.5% of GDP in most countries. On a global scale, the United Nations estimated that the number of international migrants reached 281 million in 2020, comprising approximately 3.6% of the global population.
Young and scared, two boys French police have taken off a train coming from the Italian town of Ventimiglia. Without documents, they are forced to return to Italy, unless they can prove they are underaged, something that's often impossible. Ghali from Guinea and Diawara from Côte d'Ivoire walked the 4 hours back from the border. After escaping economic hardship in their own countries, then racist violence while transiting in Tunisia, they survived a hazardous boat journey across the Mediterranean to Italy.
France is my dream country since I was a child. They are the ones who colonized us. That's why I will try to enter again. It's our country. France and Guinea are the same country.
But intense border checks within the Schengen zone have made these attempts difficult and dangerous. Refugees, migrants and asylum seekers have died hiding on top of trains or crossing mountains.
The situation is difficult. We do what we can and what we are asked to do. But whether this is a long-term solution, that's a question for politicians.
Under an EU agreement, refugees can only apply for asylum in the first country of arrival, which is often Italy. But Doctors Without Borders say 80% don't want to stay there.
The strict border controls imposed by French authorities have led to a diplomatic row between France and Italy, with France accusing the Italian government of Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni of not being able to stop immigration, and Italy accusing France of letting it deal with the increased numbers of migrants and refugees alone. The result is what some have described as a ping-pong game involving human beings.
After being pushed back to Italy, many people are homeless, having lost any rights to protection and often living in poor conditions.
For us it's important that all the Europe is going to try to find a solution. This means that it's naturally speaking, it's normal that Italy represents like a bridge on the Mediterranean, so everybody are arriving here. But it's important that then the Europe is taking charge to manage this kind of flow.
As soon as they have recovered from their ordeal, Ghali and Diawara will make another attempt to reach France.
There is always hope. As long as I am alive, I have hope. If you don't have hope, you have nothing to live for.
Others have resigned themselves to living in limbo in Italy, hoping someday their chances of a better life will improve. Step Vaesen, Al Jazeera, Ventimiglia, Italy.
Mexico's President Andrés Manuel.
Will France's controversial Darmanin law resolve the crisis or widen the gulf? France's new immigration legislation, enacted in early 2023, signals a significant change in the country's approach to immigration management and integration. Named the Darmanin Law in honour of Interior Minister Gerald Darmanin, it aims to impose stricter conditions on family reunifications, establish annual immigration quotas, and prioritise welfare benefits for French citizens. Children born in France to foreign parents will no longer automatically receive citizenship. Dual nationals accused of crimes could face faster revocation of their French passports. It also aims to regularise undocumented workers in key sectors. Estimates suggest there are between 600,000 to 900,000 undocumented workers. The new immigration legislation has triggered protests and polarised public opinion, with critics accusing President Macron of yielding to far-right pressure. Surveys indicate that while 70% of French citizens support the law, 73% believe it mirrors the policies of Marine Le Pen's party.
They have begun their first reconnaissance missions. Police forces brought to the French island of Mayotte as reinforcement have begun tracking down illegal settlements. Over 600 police officers in total have arrived from mainland France over the last few days, as these images, filmed by local residents, show. The police interventions in the shanty towns of the French territory are set to begin on Monday at the latest. Many neighborhoods, built without official permits, could be dismantled and thousands of undocumented migrants expelled. Most of them will be sent to Anjouan in the Comoros, where they originally came from. In this village, residents are preparing for imminent destruction. The authorities have recently tagged their makeshift houses with these numbers.
We are told we will demolish your houses.
Some people have given up and are packing their bags. Others are determined to stay. Like this woman who arrived from the Comoros 25 years ago.
We're not dogs, we're not animals.
She has just refused an offer to be relocated.
Housing for 3 months. 3 months with 7 children. 7 kids, and my husband is French.
This high school student is already planning to return to Mayotte if she is expelled. She has always lived here, but has never had a residence permit. She wants to get her high school diploma.
Without the French diploma, it's useless, because it won't show that I studied in France, but rather that I studied in the Comoros.
The police are expecting heavy resistance in the coming weeks. This often happens during interventions in slums. They also can encounter groups of machete-wielding youths who also attack school buses. Despite risks of tensions, some within Mayotte, such as these community leaders, support the expulsions.
Our schools are overcrowded with children, and our resources are exhausted.
What we expect in Mayotte is, first of all, security.
The expulsions have been slammed by human rights groups and the president of the Comoros.
Europe's migration challenges. Are we approaching an inevitable crisis? In 2021, Europe saw 380,000 illegal border crossings, marking a 17% increase from the previous year. The majority of these crossings were made by Syrians, Guineans, and Afghans. Media coverage on both sides of the sea has been intense, yet often overlooks the profound impacts of unchecked immigration. The focus tends to skim over the significant burden migration places on local resources, security, and social unity. This diminishes crucial conversations about protecting borders and maintaining citizens' quality of life.
French Riviera has been a welcome escape for foreigners for centuries, a mix of nationalities looking for sun and sea. But in this region close to the border with Italy, anti-immigration and xenophobic sentiments are on the rise. Fed by the far-right National Rally Party, which has been polling as the most popular here.
I want them to think about us French people who have built this country and now live in misery because pensions are low and the cost of living is high.
Every day, French border police prevent dozens of migrants and refugees, often traveling from Africa through Italy, from entering the country. The National Rally Party wants France to reinstate national borders.
Opponents say plans by the far right to tighten border controls even further are only unrealistic campaign rhetoric that forces refugees and migrants to take more dangerous routes. But with immigration being one of the main election themes, these are plans a large number of voters like to hear.
The National Rally Party also wants to introduce a system of national preference, which will exclude millions of non-French nationals from social benefits, and to exclude people with dual nationalities from certain positions.
It's threatening for us citizens with different nationalities. It's not easy to live in a country that no longer wants us, that threatens us and tells us we are no longer welcome while we participate in the French economy. We studied here, pay taxes.
Hagar runs several restaurants with her husband in Nice. Originally from Tunisia, Hagar moved here from Italy 12 years ago. Bilal has both French and Tunisian nationality.
These measures make us dual national feel like second-class citizens. Other programs of the National Rally Party are vague, but this one about dual nationality shows you are less and less welcome in France, even though you are French.
The couple is considering leaving France if the National Rally Party are asked to lead the next government. The party's candidate in the border region did not want to respond to questions and stopped people from speaking to us, showing a growing divide in a region long symbolizing the French motto of equality, liberty and fraternity. Stepfasten, Al Jazeera at the French Riviera.
In 2023, Darmanin took a firm stance. France will not accept any migrants from the overwhelmed Italian island of Lampedusa. This represents a notable departure from past policies. Over a span of just 2 days, from September 12th to 14th, more than 7,000 people arrived on Lampedusa, bringing the total to 10,000, a record for an island with 6,000 inhabitants. Between January 1st and July 23rd, more than 84,300 individuals arrived in Italy by sea, marking a 144% increase from 2022. Lampedusa alone accounted for more than half of these arrivals. The central Mediterranean route recorded 232,350 irregular border crossings into the EU during the first 8 months of 2023, the highest since 2016. Italy, under the leadership of Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, is also taking a firm stance, proposing a naval blockade to prevent migrant boats from departing. France is following a similar path by intensifying border patrols and utilising drone surveillance over the Alps to deter unauthorised entries. Is the UK undermining France's efforts to control illegal migration? France's Court of Accounts, an independent auditing body, has pointed out major deficiencies in the collaboration between France and Britain regarding migrant crossings. The report criticises the UK for offering only basic intelligence on migrant movements, greatly impeding French efforts to handle the crisis effectively. In 2022, there were more than 45,000 attempts to cross into Britain, and the French managed to thwart 56% of these attempts. This success rate has not improved from the previous year and is still deemed inadequate.
French police are looking for a dead body an Ivorian man says he saw while crossing the Alps from Italy. With border police pushing back hundreds of refugees and migrants every day, it's forced them to resort to a more dangerous route. But many attempts fail due to bad weather and police patrolling in the mountains using drones. Those pushed back return to a shelter run by an Italian priest.
I heard someone is died there, found someone die in the mountain. But yes, I'm so sorry for this.
But it doesn't stop you.
Yeah, it doesn't stop you. If I stop something like this, stop me.
Amin is planning to leave the same evening using a route he downloaded from an app. The shelter can barely cope with the large number of people from Africa and the Middle East arriving every day.
More people arriving means more people to take care of, and we can't give them the attention they need. If there are fewer people, we can talk to them and give them some hope. But when there are 100 people here, we can just give them some pasta, a shower and a bed.
The shelter provides warm clothes to help them cope with often freezing temperatures. Amin left Morocco 2 years ago and has faced violence traveling on the so-called Balkan route from Turkey.
Alhamdulillah, but we need a better life. We come here to to change my life. We don't come here we have food in Morocco, we have everything, but we need better life.
Their journey through the Alps can see them passing peaks as high as 2,000 meters. It's a difficult and sometimes dangerous route, but those crossing have been traveling for months and even years to reach this point and have seen much more dangerous situations. A prayer before the journey begins. Amin wants to go to Paris to start working in food delivery, but he'll need to cross the Alps first.
British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's government asserts strong measures and improved collaboration, but the French report paints a contrasting picture, a relationship skewed by withheld crucial intelligence and failed operational teamwork. Nevertheless, essential bilateral cooperation remains hard to achieve, marked by political manoeuvres and ineffective implementation. This scenario prompts serious doubts about the authenticity and efficacy of global agreements and the actual obstacles to managing a crisis with humanitarian and political consequences. As the discussion on optimal migration management persists, can genuine international cooperation ever be achieved, or are we inevitably moving toward a worsening crisis? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. For more content like this, be sure to subscribe to the channel.